As a species, we seem to put an awful lot of emphasis on symbols of wealth, whether we win the lottery or inherit a lot of money or hit it big on the stock market or end up in a job that pays huge amounts of money or any other means that we have figured out to generate large numbers in our bank accounts. For some reason, when this happens to people, they get the sudden urge to spend huge swathes of it on these big symbols of wealth that don't necessarily have any practical value in their life. And it seems to be a weird contortion of the human mind that dictates that we spend most of our life just spending money on things that are practically relevant to the moment. But as soon as we get an excess amount of money, the concept of practicality just goes out the window and we have to spend disproportionately huge sums of money on the most impractical thing we can possibly think of. When I first passed my driving test 476 years ago, I had a look in the classified ads to see what kind of car I could afford. And of course, being a young male, my eye was immediately drawn to an XJ Jaguar that was being sold for about £1,150. And I thought, yes, just think of that, just going straight into Jaguars from passing your test, that would be fantastic. But of course, it was very old, and I should imagine if you took a Jaguar to the Jaguar showroom for any kind of minor repair, they'd probably charge you about £100 just to unscrew a bolt. And that's not the only expense you might incur if you bought a Jaguar. Reading further into it at the time, I discovered that it had 12 miles to the gallon. That's an awful lot of petrol. That's the kind of consumption where you have to go to the petrol station to fill up, and then by the time you've got home you have to drive back to the petrol station to fill it up again. And not only that, but the insurance, when I found out how much it cost me to insure that, the insurance was about £1,150 a year. So in terms of money, the purchase price was fairly irrelevant really. Even if they were giving it away for free, I'd still have to be forking out thousands of pounds every year on it. But also from a practical point of view, what am I going to do with a Jaguar? An old Jaguar? I mean, they go fast. I live in a country with a national speed limit of 70 miles an hour. There's nowhere in this country I can go where I can drive for more than 70 miles an hour without being constantly paranoid about what might turn up in my wing mirror. And they're a really long car. The bonnet itself is larger than some cars, and most places you go have standard sizes for parking spaces. And that's going to be a real pig to park, isn't it? You're going to have to be looking for, I don't know, 2 spaces to try and squeeze in comfortably and not have the end poking out, waiting for somebody to drive past and crunch the front of it as they, I don't know, try and squeeze through to get to their parking spot. And yet for some reason just this allure of owning a Jaguar was just so strong that despite all these impractical elements that are blatantly, obviously, and right in front of my face there, my mind is still thinking, yeah, it'd be nice to have a Jag. It makes no sense whatsoever, and I never did buy the Jaguar, and my brain luckily has this sort of, I don't know, control mechanism whereby if the practicalities just overload the aspects, you know, I can hold back and I don't take interest anymore. I didn't live to regret not buying the Jaguar. I lived quite the opposite. I lived to appreciate the fact that I had this mechanism in my brain that prevented me from just going, ooh. And yet so many people, they don't have that mechanism. It seems no matter how bizarrely impractical something is, as soon as they have enough money to afford something incredibly impractical, they just jump at the chance. And I suppose it's just this thing of status symbols. That's the word for it, isn't it? We have such a great desire for status that all concept of practicality just seems to go out the window. Another example of this, of course, is huge unwieldy houses, like 16 bedrooms and 10 reception rooms and multiple kitchens and cellars and landscaped gardens, and the list of things that you can needlessly pack into a large house is almost limitless, I suppose. And yet it's all so incredibly impractical. Even if you've got 14 kids, you still probably don't need 14 bedrooms, let alone 14 large bedrooms. And you still probably wouldn't need 14 bathrooms attached to each one. And you certainly wouldn't need 14 toilets. And you wouldn't need 14 different reception rooms. You know, you wouldn't have one room specifically for watching telly and one room for specifically playing snooker and one room specifically for having dancing in. I should think even if you had 14 kids, you'd probably all still be watching telly in the same room of an evening and probably eating dinner in the same room. But even if you did manufacture a situation where you had such a large family that you could justify such a large property having some kind of practical value, you're still met with the increasingly exponential running costs. When the carpet gets old, you're not just going down to the carpet shop to buy a few metres of shag pile. You're going down to the carpet shop to buy thousands of square foot of shag pile, which is no cheap endeavour. Every time the plumber comes for their check-up or to mend something, we're talking about a whole day's worth of activity, maybe multiple days of activity. And oh God, could you imagine replacing all the windows? How much is that going to cost? And this is all before you just get to daily cleaning. It'd take you all day just to hoover, let alone dust the place. Oh, and keeping it warm. Jesus, imagine trying to keep 33 different rooms warm. This is such an impractical thing that we even have living examples in the country at the moment of vast estates that have just become too unwieldy, even for the super rich, that they just donate them to the National Trust and say, oh, just turn them into museums, we can't be bothered anymore. Because when the rich person buys it, they can probably figure it out for their lifetime. They've got enough money to pay for all these people to constantly come and do all these things all the time. But by the time you go down 3 or 4 generations and lots of inheritances, and you've just got some poor bloke scratching his head on how he can even scrape together the funds to pay for somebody to mow his lawns that had taken 3 weeks by himself to do, let alone try and maintain 14 bedrooms and 14 reception rooms. And they start referring to the building as the pile, and they start dreaming of the simple life of just a normal house and a normal place that they can just live in rather than manage. For the person who bought it, it was this big status symbol that marked their place in society. But 3 or 4 generations later, and it's just this big beast of burden that causes constant misery. Oh, and jewellery as well. There's another great status symbol that as soon as you have lots of money, then you've got to buy your wives 93 carat 200-piece diamond necklaces that they wear once every 10 years when they go to meet the Queen. And on the face of it, it's great in the moment, and the excitement of sitting there in the shop and, oh my God, look at that, I'm so rich, I can afford that now, and putting it on, and my God, I am so rich, aren't I? And it's that lovely, ooh, lovely, I want that, you know. But down the line, the reality of it is that, you know, you can't just keep it in a pot on your chest of drawers. It's worth hundreds of thousands of pounds. You have to keep it in a bank, and you have to start paying for its protection. So every time you want to wear it for that one special occasion, You have to go all the way to the bank and get it out and sign the thing and put it on and wear it for one night and have 3 billion bodyguards all with binoculars making sure nobody nicks the necklace. Then you end the night, go home, take it off, and then next you take it back to the bank, put it back in the... God, what a palaver. All for the sake of a bit of status symbol. It's highly impractical, isn't it? I mean, you could wear... You couldn't wear a fake one for the same effect. But, you know, there's ways to address... There's ways to dress yourself in a manner that makes you noticeable and expresses that you have some kind of wealth about you and prestige without having all that palaver involved. And it's more that your wealth shows that you can afford the palaver rather than your wealth can afford to make somebody look pretty for a night. Oh, and yachts as well, that's another thing, isn't it? If you get stinkingly rich, you have to buy a yacht. Nobody knows why. Nobody knows who started this. But it's just one of those things now. You're not rich unless you have a yacht. You know. And what is the practical point of a yacht? Again, it just sits there costing you money for large portions of the year, and then you get all excited for a week because it's the week where you take your yacht out and you go down there and you spend ages cleaning it out and preparing it and filling it up with fuel. You take it out to the middle of the ocean for a bit and sit there, I don't know, fish or have a party or whatever it is you do. And just being in the middle of nowhere in the middle of the sea sounds like a sort of precarious place to be to me. As a bit of a landlubber, it doesn't sound like a particularly exciting adventure to me. It might be for some, but even still it's just a week, isn't it? There are easier ways to catch fish and there are easier ways to have a party. I'd have thought having a party on a yacht in the middle of the sea was probably the worst place in the world to have a party. The last place you want like 20 or 30 drunk people is in the middle of an ocean where at any moment one of them could slip on a slippery surface or wobble around or fall over and, you know, man overboard. Don't really want that kind of pressure at a party, really, do you? Not a very party mindset, is it? And of course, if the thing starts to sink, then, you know, you're really sunk, aren't you? But it's just part of the status. It's what everybody else who has money does. So you have to do it. Because that's what you do. The poor old yacht salesmen would be pulling their hairs out if, you know, suddenly rich people don't want yachts anymore. That'd destroy an entire industry. They can't sell them to fishermen, for heaven's sakes. And yeah, I do apologise to all these industries that exist solely to provide status symbols to the impractically rich. You know, but what is it? What is this thing about impracticality that is so closely associated with wealth? I was thinking, if ever I got rich, what kind of stupidly impractical thing could I invent as the new thing for all rich people to be suddenly addicted to getting involved in and joining in with? What new impractical trend could I start that hasn't already been attempted by somebody, that isn't already a thing? I don't know, how about mobile beds? I'll invent mobile beds so that the extremely rich can spend hundreds of thousands of pounds on highly elaborate motorised beds that they can drive around their massive mansions in and stay in bed all day and then drive out onto the lawn into the garden while still in their bed and sit and read the newspaper in the morning sun, and then when they finished doing that they could, I don't know, drive down to the shop to buy a pint of milk in a motorised bed while, you know, sipping on a glass of champagne as they do so, because it drives by itself, you know, it's all automated, and no rich person would be seen dead at the village shop, without turning up in their four-poster. Oh, I don't know really. Maybe that's why I'm not rich, because I'm not practically motivated to own anything that's ridiculously impractical. Maybe if I did become rich, I wouldn't be allowed in their social circles because I would just be considered far too boring. It'd be too difficult for me to host 3,000 person parties in a one-bedroom flat in the middle of London. I probably wouldn't be able to find a decent girlfriend because every time they walk past a jewellery shop I'd just be like, what's the point? And I'd be like, ooh, who's this tight wanker? And off they go, I'd never get invited to any yacht parties because I can't invite anybody else to my yacht parties. And I spend the whole time sitting in the middle of the boat as the furthest away from the sea as possible and just shouting at people, oh, it's a bit close to the edge, don't, just move back a bit, oh please, no, you're driving me nuts. Right, not inviting him again. I'll turn up to a party at somebody's mansion in my 10-year-old Ford Fiesta and everybody will just be looking out the window and laughing their heads off, imagining some kind of weird Mr. Bean has turned up to the party. I don't know, maybe I should just never bother trying to get rich. Maybe it's better for my sanity and my psychology if I don't get rich. Because if I get rich, I would just be the most useless rich person in the world.